evidence to those investigating his efforts to overturn the election. It's pretty clear evidence. In a statement released last night, Trump offered a rather stunning admission about what he expects from his vice president, Mike Pence, on January 6th of last year. Trump wrote, quote, "If the vice president had absolutely no right to change the presidential election results in the Senate, despite fraud and many other irregularities, how come the Democrats and rhino Republicans like wacky Susan Collins are desperately trying to pass legislation that will not allow the vice president to change the results of the election?" Actually, what they are saying is that Mike Pence did have the right to change the outcome, and they now want to take that right away. Unfortunately, he didn't exercise that power. He could have overturned the election. Yikes.
Yeah.
That's
really,
the quiet part out loud?
That's what everybody's saying is that he did say the quiet part out loud. Jonathan Lemire, the president of the United States, deriding his vice president for not overturning an election.
Yeah, we're more than a year, of course, since that January 6th, and Donald Trump is making it plain as day what he wanted his former vice president to do. It was interesting seeing, first of all, the response from Republicans yesterday. A lot of them came out and said, whoa, this is not what we're looking for here. This should not be what we want. There's a lot of tension within the GOP right now who want to turn the page to 2022, turn the page to 2024. They obviously feel good about the midterms this year. And Trump is stubbornly staying in 2020. And this comes at a moment where, he also says that he felt that if there were, quote, illegal investigations into him, he was calling for his supporters to have massive rallies across the country, including in Washington, D.C. The biggest rallies yet, even bigger than January 6th. And this, of course, is dangerous on a couple levels, Joe. On one hand, he is, as you might imagine, suggesting that any investigation into him was improper and illegal, much like when he was president. Any news story about him that he didn't like, he would just deem fake news. And to do so and to suggest that he would call for his supporters to march on those locations where the investigations are taking place or Washington, D.C., seemingly that's an act of intimidation. Which is deeply concerning as well. And certainly the prosecutor in Georgia who's looking into that case has already called for additional security for her and her staff. I think we may see more of the same. A dangerous moment, Joe.
Well, you're seeing the rise of authoritarianism, and it's certainly what we all understand Donald Trump's been wanting to do for quite some time. If you can't win an election, steal an election, overturn an election, and that's what he was saying, talking about for Mike Pence. But yeah, he actually said some things. We haven't been playing his rallies of late, but he actually said some things that were so inflammatory, Mika, that you had Republicans coming out and actually criticizing him and saying, hey, no, let's take a step back. We didn't want to overturn the election. We were just talking about having some of the votes recounted. But again, Donald Trump, he's now speaking in shorthand, now saying what he really means. He wanted a free and fair election overturned. Why? Because he didn't win. And again, his words have consequences. This new sort of almost fascist. I don't know. Do you say almost fascist after January the 6th, or do you say fascist? I
think you go
this fascist instinct
right
to use violence to overturn government institutions. We're seeing it at Trump events. Where you have people asking, when do we start using guns? You're seeing it at forums. This past weekend, I believe it was, you had a Michigan Senate candidate telling people to bring guns to polling places. If they didn't win, they needed to be locked and loaded. Basically saying if we can't win at the ballot box, we're going to win by killing people. And then, of course, at the rally, Mika, the other rally he had, more concerning rhetoric, even for Republican senators.
Yeah, at that rally in Texas on Saturday, Trump said if reelected, he would consider pardons for those charged in the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
If I run and if I win, we will treat those people from January 6th fairly. We will treat them fairly. And if it requires pardons, we will give them pardons because they are being treated so unfairly.
You know, just so we're very clear what he's talking about. He's talking about pardoning people, some of whom have been charged by the federal government for sedition against the United States of America. And of course, he knows that because it's sedition that he encouraged. He's talking about pardoning people who beat the hell out of cops with American flags and with Trump flags, that jammed cops' heads indoors, that used bear spray against law enforcement officers. It was one of the most grotesque, certainly around the Capitol in Washington that I've seen, grotesque use of violence, repeated violence against law enforcement officers. And that's who Donald Trump called a patriot, called patriots on January 6th, those who were beating the hell out of law enforcement officers with American flags. And now he's talking about pardoning those same people who also have been charged with committing sedition against the United States, had gun stockpiles across the river in Virginia that they were going to bring in and use in a final push on January the 6th.
Any Republicans who are on the fence about how dangerous Trump might be might want to consider what he said at this rally, including what appeared to be calling for more violence in the future across the country. Also yesterday, some Republicans did respond, condemning the comments by Trump.
Well, I think it's inappropriate. I don't want to reinforce that defiling the Capitol was okay. I don't want to do anything that would make this more likely in the future. I want to deter people who did what on January the 6th, and those who did it, I hope they go to jail and get the book thrown at them because they deserve it.
I do not think the President Trump should have made that pledge to do pardons. We should let the judicial process proceed.
Folks that were part of the riots and frankly the assault on the U.S. Capitol have to be held accountable. There is a rule of law. I don't care whether you were part of the burning cities and Antifa in 2020, you were storming the Capitol in 2021. Everybody needs to be held fairly accountable across. That's part of leadership.
They shouldn't be pardoned.
Of course not. Oh my goodness, no.
So there you have a governor, Mika, a Republican governor with a 70% approval rating in one